At this point in time, we've worked on finding the percent. Now we're going to work on finding the whole, and we're going to use both methods again, the percent proportion and the decimal method. 15 is 25% of what number? Remember that the percent proportion says part over whole equals percent over 100. In this case, I see my percentage is 25. Part over whole is over of, sometimes we call it. Is what goes with our part, of is our whole. So 15 means 15 is my part. Of what number? So that means my whole, my of, we don't know. So I'm going to put in a variable, let's put in letter D for dog. And then I'm going to use cross products to solve my percent proportion. 25 times D is 25D. 15 times 100 is 1,500. The inverse of multiplying by 25 is dividing by 25, so I do that to both sides. And when I do that, I get 1,500 divided by 25 is 60. Now, do not add a percent to this answer. 15 is 25% of 60, not of 60%. We've already got a percentage, so be extra careful. This answer is just 60. Now my decimal method, 15 means 15 equals 25% as a decimal, 0 and 25 hundredths. Of means multiply what number we don't know, so I'm going to put in a letter E for my variable. The inverse of multiplying by 25 hundredths is dividing by 25 hundredths, so I'm going to divide both sides by 25 hundredths. When I do 15 divided by 25 hundredths, I get, oops, not times, 15 divided by 25 hundredths. I get 60 as my answer, so 60 equals E, or E equals 60, and 60 is my part, or my whole, I mean. 15 is 25% of 60, that seems reasonable. 15 is a small part of 60, just like 25 is a small part of 100. I got the same answer using both methods. I just have to pick, or I have to be able to do both and make sure that my answer makes sense. At this point in time, I would challenge you to pause the video and try the last two, and then unpause it to see how you did. So hopefully at this point in time, you've tried these last two, and now you're just checking. The percent proportion says 28% goes over 100. Of what number? Of is my whole, so I don't know what my whole is. I'm going to put a letter F in as my variable. And then is 35, 35 is my part, which goes in my numerator of my first fraction. I use cross products to solve, and I get 28F equals 3,500. I divide both sides by 28 to isolate my variable, and F is equal to 3,500 divided by 28, which is 125. Again, do not put a percent sign on 125. 125 is my whole. 28% of what number? Of means multiply, so if I write 28% as a decimal, I get 0 and 28 hundredths. Times a whole number, let's use G as my variable, because of what number we don't know. Is means equals 35. The inverse of multiplying is dividing both sides by 28 hundredths. And if I use my calculator and do 35 divided by 28 hundredths, I should get the same answer I got in the first column here. G is equal to 125. 28% of 125 is 35. That seems reasonable and makes sense, so I can go to my last one. 204 is 240% of what number? 204 is my part. My whole, I'll label with an H. And then percent is 240 over 100. Use cross products to solve. 240H is equal to 20,400. The inverse of multiplying is dividing, so I'll divide both sides by 240. When I do that, 20,400 divided by 240 is equal to 85. And so here you see H equals 85. 204 is 240% of 85. That seems reasonable because if 85 is my whole, 240 is more than 100, so 204 is more than 85. That seems like a reasonable answer to me. And then let's do the decimal method. 204 is means equals, so 204 equals 240. I'm going to take my decimal, move it 2 places to the left to make it a decimal. That's why we call it the decimal method. 2.4% of what number? We don't know, so let's use J. And then the inverse of multiplying by 2 4/10 is dividing by 2 4/10. So 204 divided by 2 4/10 is 85. 85 is equal to J. That's the answer we got the first time, and so our answer still makes sense using the decimal method. 204 is 240% of 85.